Some lakes look completely calm on the surface, but sometimes something down there is watching you the entire time. Lake Erie is one of the largest freshwater lakes in North America. Thousands of people visit it every year to fish, relax, and enjoy the quiet water. Most of them leave with nothing more than a few good memories and maybe a few fish. But one night, a father and his son may have experienced something in that lake that neither of them could truly explain. The father was the kind of person who took fishing very seriously. His tackle box was filled with dozens of different flies, rubber bait, and imitation lures. Fishing was not just a hobby for him, it was something he truly loved. One summer afternoon, while the two of them were sitting at home, feeling bored, the father suggested taking a short fishing trip to Lake Erie. The son was not exactly a fan of fishing, but spending time with his dad like that didn't happen very often, so he agreed. When they arrived at the lake, the conditions were perfect. The water was calm, the weather was clear, and the fish were biting. In just 4 hours, they had already caught more than a dozen fish, mostly smallmouth bass, along with a couple of rainbow trout that they planned to cook over a fire the next morning. They were even lucky enough to borrow a large boat from one of the father's friends. It had a wide deck, comfortable enough for the two of them to sleep outside instead of going below. That night, the lake was completely still. The father fell asleep almost immediately, and his loud snoring filled the quiet night air. But the son stayed awake for a while, staring out into the darkness of the lake. For a long time, nothing happened. Then suddenly, thump, a solid impact struck the bottom of the boat. The son immediately sat up and looked out across the water. There was no waves, no nearby boats. The lake was as still as a mirror. He thought about waking his dad but decided not to. His father was known for having a terrible attitude whenever someone woke him up. So instead, he kept watching the water. A few minutes passed. Then suddenly a huge splash erupted somewhere to his left. He quickly grabbed a lantern and leaned over the side of the boat, shining the light across the dark water. But there was nothing there. No movement, no ripples, just black water stretching endlessly into the night. Now he was starting to feel uneasy. Something had clearly made that splash, and whatever it was, it had to be big. Curious and maybe a little reckless, he decided to try something. He picked up one of the bass they had caught earlier and tossed it into the lake. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the water exploded. A massive shape burst out from beneath the surface and snatched the fish instantly. The sun froze. Under the pale light of the full moon and the glow of the lantern, he could see it clearly for just a second. The creature had to be at least 15 feet long. Its body was dark green, its head was narrow and flat, shaped almost like a garden spade. But what stood out the most were its eyes, white, almost glowing, with a tiny black dot in the center. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished back beneath the water. A second later, bang! Something slammed hard into the boat. The impact was strong enough to wake the father. He sat up immediately, confused and irritated, asking what was going on. The son quickly tried to explain everything: the splash, the creature, the thing that had come out of the lake. But the father just stared at him with a skeptical look. The truth was, the boy had a habit of telling tall tales in the past. So to the father, this sounded like just another story. He shook his head and muttered that if the boy didn't want to go fishing, he should have just said so instead of making things up. Then he laid back down and went right back to sleep. But the son stayed awake a little longer. He stared out across the dark water again, and just before he finally lay down, he heard a faint sound drifting across the lake. A soft hiss. This time he didn't lean over to look. He didn't shine the lantern again. He simply laid back down and forced himself to sleep. To this day, he still doesn't know what that creature was. Lake Erie is known for large fish. Some people have reported enormous catfish or eels in certain waters, but nothing like what he described that night. And maybe that's the real reason this story is worth telling, because we often believe we understand the world around us. We believe lakes, forests, and oceans are places that humans have already explored and explained. But sometimes one strange moment reminds us that we don't actually know everything. Maybe there are still creatures out there that science has not discovered yet. Or maybe some things in nature simply prefer to stay hidden. After that night in Lake Erie, one person became completely convinced of something. Sometimes the water is not empty. Sometimes something is down there.